Hi, everyone. I'm Toni Land, founder and chief experience officer for Landing Exceptional Experiences, and your host of ToniTime, where solutions are just a discussion away. So, our discussion today is going to center around purposeful rounding. Now, you might use some different terminology. You might call it hourly rounding. You might call it intentional rounding. You're going to hear me use the phrase purposeful rounding for our discussion today. So I chose this topic not only because there are many comments out here around this subject, but also because many organizations continue to be challenged with buy-in around the initiative, implementing the initiative, and sustaining the initiative. So I thought it would be good if we start with truly a definition around purposeful rounding. And I love this one that I found out in some of the research. So purposeful rounding is a proactive, systematic, nurse-driven, evidence-based intervention that helps us anticipate and address patient needs. So you can see lots of words there, proactive. So three of my favorite: proactive, anticipate, and address. And so I think bringing those into the conversation when we talk about purposeful rounding can really help the team members to focus their intentions around their work. So let's lean into a Reddit post and some of the responses to that Reddit post as we continue on this discussion. So what actually is your opinion on hourly rounds is the post. Seeking advice, she says, he or she says, I genuinely feel like unless you have someone who is critical or at high risk of falling out of bed or eloping, they're pointless, especially at night. People who are incontinent, unable of repositioning themselves, are changed every 2 hours or more frequently if needed anyway. Am I insanely wrong for having this thought process? So I think you're going to find what their peers, how the peers respond to this person interesting. So the first response, my actual opinion is that it should be required in every facility in the country. So many nurses ignore it and think it doesn't matter. And the number of codes I've gone into at 7 a.m. when nurses haven't checked their patients at all overnight to find them dead at shift change, often already cold and dusky, very disturbing that any nurse wouldn't want to check in on someone in their care. There is always time for it. Make the time. Another post from one of their peers. Thanks to contracting, I've worked all acuities and all shifts at this point in my career, 6 years in. Some patients absolutely have pathos that need hourly rounds. Some people can't fend for themselves and need to be checked up on. But some people can be left alone unless they call. Just poke the head in every now and then to make sure you're not missing something. Patients deserve privacy and rest, and we got to trust that not everybody is dropping dead in the hospital. Let them sleep, etc. Also, rounds can be done in many ways. PT just told me they'll work with the patient. There's a round. I got them on the monitor and looked over vitals and checked their waveforms. Round. They accidentally hit their call light and say, sorry, you don't have to send anyone in. Round. It's more about not forgetting about them and not being negligent on certain pathos that can move quick and quiet. I'll say this though, if somebody goes into your room to help the patient without you, go and check on them afterwards. They will oftentimes forget to set bed alarms, restrain your vent, etc., and then look at you like it's your fault when the patient's self-extubated, naked, and bloody in the hallway. So another comment. I came here to say this. Hourly rounding as in take a look and observe their general state? Yes. Hourly rounding as in interrupt the patient with an overly scripted speech about whatever number of P's they are currently using? No. And they got support on this. In fact, one person said this, period. Another comment. I do my hourlies, especially when I'm floated to the floor and I don't have everyone hooked up to a monitor. What I don't like is being given an effing script full of buzzwords to recite to try to bring up survey scores. I do what I'm supposed to do, as do 95% of my coworkers. And the nurses who don't sure aren't going to change their ways now that they have a script. And one final comment I want to read to you. Okay, what I've learned so far is that, yes, I'm wrong, and I should round on my people more frequently. That's entirely fair. I also want to make sure that before anyone thinks I'm just a crap nurse, that I do make sure everyone is connected to monitors that should be. And if I'm concerned about someone trying to meet Jesus, I not only check on them super frequently, but will use all forms of monitoring devices at my disposal. You guys convince me, though. I'll change my ways and round more often. Surprised? Were you guys surprised by those comments? That the nurses get it. They understand checking in on their patients and making sure clinically that there aren't any needs there for their patients. And I will even go back to the proactive and anticipating. They are doing that from a clinical perspective, as one of the responders said. You want to make sure that you are especially conscientious about pathos that can move quick and quiet. So they get that. But are there other ways that they can be proactive and recognize truly why that proactiveness helps the patients and the families and ultimately them also? So let's dig into a little bit of the research. So one of the research articles out there shows this, consistently shows this link between hourly nurse rounding and patient outcomes. And it showed a reduction in falls, decreased pressure ulcers, decreased call light usage, and yes, improved patient experience also. One of the studies out there showed a more than 21% reduction in fall rates. I mean, that's a big reduction in fall rates. And so you wonder why this focus on falls. A lot of this work really started from the quality and safety perspective, where they were looking at how do we decrease falls for patients, as accidental falls remain a commonly reported and serious adverse event in hospitals that oftentimes result in physical injury and, unfortunately, even sometimes in death. So the falls rate can vary anywhere from 2.2, some of the literature says, to 17.1 falls per 1,000 bed days. And it's devastating, you guys. It's devastating for the patients and the families. They're scared, they're fearful. I will even say for us as team members, it's challenging for us. We don't want our patients to fall while they're in our care. Although still, of those that fall, 33 to 60% of those falls lead to injury, and 15% result in a serious injury. So, I mean, we definitely have an opportunity to look at rounding and falls and the intentionality, the purposefulness, anticipating those needs in order to decrease those falls. One of the studies showed that 45.2% of the falls in an acute care setting were toilet relating. So they talked about the P's, the pain position, potty possessions. The potty or the toilet related is one of those connector pieces around decreasing your falls, knowing and anticipating. Oftentimes that's when it's happening, when patients are ambulating to or from the bathroom. So I know that oftentimes this whole purposeful rounding body of work is implemented by the patient experience team. And there's not right or wrong in that. But I think there is an opportunity for collaboration. So how are we making sure that this is not just presented as a patient experience initiative all around patient experience and patient experience scores, but how do we truly connect it to safety and the perception of safety for our patients and our families? one of the research articles out there, and all of these will be in the links, but I'll put all the links below. But they said that of patients who reported optimal experience of safety, so they were specifically asked if they felt safe in the environment where they were receiving care, and these were in the hospital setting. When they reported an optimal experience, 84.9% of them said they would definitely recommend the hospital. 34% who do not report an optimal experience would say they definitely recommend. So you definitely see that shift there, 84.9 or 85% versus 34% when they felt safe in our care. And so, rounding can be one of those ways that we help them to feel safe and in reality, keep them safe. So I know many talked about scripting, and there is some of the scripting component that many have implemented out there around, keywords and being able to use those words in order to ideally improve patient satisfaction or patient experience scores. Now, whether that really does it or not, I won't really try to say yes or no, but I will say that when we can improve that perception of safety, then we will see an increase in patient experience and patient experience scores. So what do you do with all this information? I will say, as you go back and revisit, purposeful, proactive rounding, taking that to a steering team or a group of team members who will work on this initiative. Include definitely your nurses and your techs, since they are the primary ones in and out of your patient rooms, and allow them to design what this looks like, everything down to how do we operationalize it, what's the script that goes along with it. If you are, let's say you have a unit or department that is very physical therapy heavy, I would bring physical therapists into that design. And as always, if possible, bring patients and families into the conversation, not just for their feedback, but part of the co-design of the work. What goals are you going to target in this body of work? The research shows us around falls, and we know that's how a lot of this work started, from a safety perspective and falls. So are we looking at decreasing falls or keeping those falls down low if you already have a low falls rate? Decreasing pressure ulcers, decreasing call bells, which I actually think is a really big one right now, as a benefit to the team members. Many units out there do not have a unit secretary or someone who is regularly at the desk to answer call bells and phones. And so when that call bell rings, it's going directly to the nurse or tech. And so if we can be proactive and decrease those call bells, that's a win for everyone involved. And as a result, we will also see an improvement in patient experience measures. So thinking of what are some of the things that we're going to put out as goals to target that will be reported not only on the unit as we track and monitor and regularly let the teams know how they're doing and how they're progressing, but also this will circle back to that steering committee so that they're able to see what they designed is accomplishing the goals, and how do they step back and punt and redesign if needed. How can technology help? Can technology help with some of the rounds? And can it help with some of the validation so that we have a way of tracking from a patient perspective? Yes, rounds are happening. And when they say it's happening, are we also seeing achievement of some of those goals that we looked for? But don't just stop with the patient's feedback. Get feedback from the team members, the ones who are actually implementing hands-on out there on those units, participating in the round themselves. So offer that opportunity for your nurses, your techs, physical therapy, if they're a part of your rounding process, depending on how it's been designed. Get feedback from them on a regular basis on what's going well, what's not going well, what are the challenges, what are the barriers, so that that feedback can go back to that steering committee in that designing process so that their voices are heard and as redesigns and edits are made until we could come up with a solution that works best for all. So I'm looking forward to your comments around purposeful, proactive rounding. Please comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe and definitely share with others. This is Toni Time, where solutions are just a discussion away.